Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I've been thinking about this budget and the budget process, I wanted to bring a perspective that I have to it, and it's that before I was elected here, I served for 8 years for the City of Norwalk as chairman of the Board of Estimate and Taxation, which for a lot of towns is the Board of Finance. And at that level, we put together city budgets, tax rates, line item the budget, control the money, the funds, all that. And coming here, I certainly get that there's differences, obviously, between the state and many towns and municipalities. Obviously, we're a heck of a lot bigger. We've got a lot more moving pieces, a lot more things going on. We have Medicaid to deal with and many other items. But there's a lot of similarities that I've discovered in terms of an approach. And I'll start with what I would describe as the process. Candidly, I think we here could learn something from our towns and cities in terms of the process. In Norwalk, a complete line item budget is prepared by the beginning of February for the entire city. And actually a month before that, the Board of Education prepares a line item budget for the entire school system. We then have until May to finalize the budget. So that means that for a good 4 or 5 months, the budget's out there in the public, and there's open workshops that are run that have public viewing, where the boards go over line by line the different budgets. There's public hearings. And so whatever is finalized by the beginning of May has been thoroughly vetted by the entire city. And I would describe that process, the integrity of that process, as high. And by integrity, I mean transparency, and I mean visibility, and I mean an openness around the whole process. And sadly here, we don't have that. I mean, I serve on appropriations, and yes, we have committee meetings, and yes, we have public hearings. But then what we have to vote on, like today, in many cases has no resemblance to what we've been looking at for the last few months. There's items that have no public hearing whatsoever, that have just been stuck on by leadership at the last moment. And I would not look at that as a high integrity process, and candidly, I don't think many voters would as well. I really think this is something that we need to do differently, and I know the governor called for that when he spoke to us at the beginning of February. I would like to see us have our budget done weeks ago, and so that it could be fully vetted with public hearings on actually what we're voting on today, that the public had a chance to take a really good crack at it, and we had a chance to debate and discuss it well before it came to the floor. So that's the process. And then in terms of the actual budget itself, I'm glad that we now here seem to be recognizing that we haven't recovered from the Great Recession yet. And that's been now 8 years since it started in 2008. Candidly, of many of the organizations in our country, we at the state here seem to be one of the last ones to have figured that out. Businesses figured it out right away. And I think in anything in life, those who react and adapt the most quickly solve the problems the most quickly. And those that don't react or are acted like in a state of denial, hope things go away, hope things get better, hope things change, wait for something magical, just really inflict a lot of pain on themselves. And then the pain gets worse and worse and worse with every year. I would say a lot of our towns and cities reacted several years ago to the Great Recession. We're now discovering that our revenues, maybe they're going to grow 1 or 2% a year. Well, for most towns and cities, the grand list only grows, if they're lucky, 1 or 2% a year. A lot of cases, it's been flat. So they've been dealing with flat budgets, which we're now only ourselves coming to discover that we have to deal with. Unfortunately, the budget here today has a lot of dubious revenue assumptions. I won't go into all of them, but certainly the approach of, well, smoke more, drink more, and gamble more, so we can take one for the team and help the state, and I guess it's sort of our patriotic duty, so the state can get more revenue. I don't think that's a good social policy approach to take. I also don't think it's a good idea that the Attorney General sue more people so we can get more revenues for the state. These are not solid revenue assumptions. As we know in our budget, on top of that, there's hundreds of millions of other gimmicks like bond premiums and other things that are just very questionable. It wouldn't pass the light of muster in any of our town or city budget processes. On the spending side, a lot of our towns and cities figured out a long time ago that you need to change the contracts, the union contracts. And that's structural change. Structural change is not getting rid of a commission. Structural change is actually renegotiating the underlying employee contracts so that workers are in 401k style pension plans. Workers have high deductible HSA medical, or they don't get post-retirement health care, they get a stipend. Structural change is like in Norwalk where we outsource garbage collection and have city carting doing it. And then because we were able to do that, they were also able to achieve single stream recycling for the first time, which benefits the environment. Or like in Norwalk, we outsourced the Norwalk Museum and got rid of defunded a union position curator, and then hired the Norwalk Historical Society, a 501c3, to take care of the collection. And what the curator couldn't do in 14 years, the Historical Society cataloged the entire collection for the city of Norwalk in 6 months. And so that's structural change. So just because some leadership here puts a title on a bill that says, hey, it's structural, it's just wrapping paper on a package that's empty, and it doesn't mean anything. Structural change is us finally addressing employee compensation. And this budget attempts to do it in a little way, increasing the premiums, healthcare premiums up to 18%. But again, that's an old style medical plan. We need to move on to high deductible health savings accounts, which is what the rest of the world has pretty much moved on to, which encourage employees to be more judicious in their medical expenses, and actually ends up benefiting them and saving the organization money. It's a win-win for everyone. We need to realign employee compensation immediately, as quickly as possible. The sooner we do that, the sooner we'll get out of this painful process that we're in, which is only going to get worse. This today is a Band-Aid, solves today. And then next year, it's going to be a worse problem. And then it's going to be worse after that. So until we finally address the core issue, Mr. Speaker, I'm afraid it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. And I get that that's not pleasant or welcome news for some of us in the chamber here, but at the end of the day, we all want this state to thrive. We want this state to be growing and winning again. So that's what we want. And Mr. Speaker, a lot of our towns and cities have already done it. So all what we need to do is what a lot of the towns and cities that we represent have already done. So we have a role model, we have an example, and Mr. Speaker, based on all of that, I'm going to vote against this budget as amendment today. Thank you.